I'm David Boehm. I'm the chair of the FACT board, and we are so glad to have participants with us today. This is an important day for us in many ways. One is to see the individuals out there that are going to gain a lot from the variety of the workshops, the participants, and from each other. And second, to see the first unveiling of the FACT report, which will give you some indication of some risk factors of violence in Virginia.
I think that the report will be a wake-up call for folks, because I think that while people certainly believe that it happens, we know, because again it happens behind closed doors. There's so much shame and guilt associated oftentimes with the type of violence that occurs within families that many times it's just not seen. And so if it's not seen in the way that other types of violence are, you know, when something happens on the street, it's in the newspapers, people are talking about it, there's lots of visibility. But when it's, you know, someone's intimate partner, when it's a parent hurting a child, when it's a caregiver hurting someone who's older, it's not something people want to really deal with and acknowledge, not because they don't care, but it's very painful. And many times the people who are doing these types of, or involved in these types of violent situations, aren't people that typically that officials or anyone else would say, these are people who hurt people, because it's a complex issue. I think also the data. You know, one of the things that service providers need is to really understand the who, the what, the why, and this will provide it, and it will provide it in one place.
Information was being collected in a very disparate way. You had the Virginia State Police producing something, the medical examiner producing other things, Prevent Child Abuse doing some third things. You ended up with a situation where you were comparing apples and oranges. You didn't have complete information. You were sometimes comparing data from one year to a data set from another year. And more importantly, we didn't always have the capacity to figure out what does it mean. So we thought by creating such a report and really creating a baseline where we would follow that it would create an opportunity for us to help the not-for-profits and the local social service agencies and others involved in the education, prevention, and treatment of abuse to do their job better, but also allow us at the state level, from a policy-making standpoint, to figure out the best way to use resources to go forward.
The more experience I have as a social worker, the more I realize that we must be collaborative in our practices, that our kids depend on us to form partnerships. There's no discipline that has all the right answers. There's no agency who has all the right answers. I think the big lesson for us culturally is that kids and families will be safer in our communities when we learn how to work in coordinated fashion.
It's looking across the continuum of family violence and really helping service providers not look at each of the areas in terms of child abuse, domestic violence, and elderly abuse in terms of those being separate types of issues. That the fact we know is that in many cases they're interrelated, and you could potentially have a family where 1, 2, or even 3 of those types of situations are occurring.
Any of us who have children or grandchildren understand that children learn what they see. And if they see that violence is okay, if they see that neglect is okay, if they see that taking someone else's money is okay, when they're 6, they're likely to think that they have an entitlement to that kind of behavior when they're in their teens or their 20s or their 60s or 70s. And so there's no question that family problems, violence, neglect, basically abuse of one another, is a continuum. That said, you can break into the continuum almost at any point.
In addition to my work with FACT, I'm also the warden at Marion Correctional Treatment Center, which is located in Marion, Virginia, and far southwest Virginia. And we see the impact of violence in many different ways. Some of our offenders who come in have a history of family abuse, which is actually domestic violence. We also see individuals who've had histories of their fathers being absent, and we're not talking again about stepfathers or stepmothers. We're talking about actually the absence of a parent. And probably the other third way is we see children who've grown up with at least one of the parents been incarcerated or at either local jail or had legal troubles.
You know, one of the things when you look across the state agencies and you think about how the Commonwealth has organized its response to family violence, you'll find that the responsibility is broken down over different secretariats, different agencies, different people hold responsibility for that. And so I think one of the important things that FACT can do is to look out over all of those services and say, this is what we're doing as a Commonwealth. And we don't necessarily need to control it all, but we do need to kind of tell the story. We need to weave this story of what we're doing as a government and as a not-for-profit sector, as a charitable section, to respond to this issue. And I think that would help the legislature, the governor, and the agencies in their longer-term planning about how to respond to these needs.
And so we're hoping that the report will open the door for more people to take a look at what we can do for family violence in their communities, in their homes, one child or one adult at a time.